How much money have I actually spent financing my own films as a producer and a director? Well, stay tuned to the end where I'll reveal the exact amounts for 4 different projects of mine and exactly where the money came from. If you're new here, I'm Jordan and welcome back to my channel. I'm a narrative writer, director, and producer and have been working in LA for the last 10 years. This channel is all about filmmaking techniques, the philosophy of art, creative and technical workflows, and what filmmaking can teach us about life. So how much did I spend on my own films? There are 4 major short films that I have produced in Los Angeles in the last 7 or 8 years since I moved out here. So let's break down each project one by one, and let's look at the numbers for what each one cost. Number 1. Cuddle Buddies. So let's look at the budget now and let's look at the actual numbers to break down exactly how much Cuddle Buddies cost and how much I personally spent on it. Let's look at the numbers of what things cost and keeping in mind that these were costs that were happening back in 2019. So if we're looking at the cast, Caitlin's rate, who is our lead actress, and as we go down, it makes sense that Caitlin obviously made the most money, including some of the overtime that she went into, mainly because we were a SAG production. And so any hours over 8 hours meant that that was time and a half onto whatever the day rate was for 8 hours. Really, she was the only one that went into overtime. So if we look at our total for the cast, it's $2,165.50. That includes all 3 days of shooting, including our studio teacher, which was the teacher that was there on set to look after our young actress Lorelai. When we go into our second section of the budget, we look at our locations. And so for the first day of the shoot, we were at a specific location in Van Nuys. And then for days 2 and 3 of the production, we were at the same location for those second 2 days. So all in all, we spent $3,654.10, which is not too bad. I think generally these days, you're really looking at least 3 to 5K for locations. For any good locations for any kind of shoot. So all in all, with transportation, we spent about $264.77. For different set operations, we spent roughly $927. For the director department, I did not take a fee for writing and directing just so we could save money on the budget, but we did have a first assistant director for each day of the 3-day shoot. So that was roughly $600. All in all, we spent about $1,575. For our lighting, we only really had to spend $1,100. For the grip department, we spent $943.89. For set decoration and production design, we spent about $1,177.78. We also saved a lot of money on wardrobe since we just used the cast wardrobe and asked them to use what they had in their closet. For hair and makeup purchases, it came out to $1,253.18. Our props total came out to $252.86. For sound, came out to $980. For post-production, we didn't have a very big post team. So all in all, our post-production costs were roughly $2,200. If we look at our grand total with post-production costs included, it came out to a whopping $19,821.86. If we look at just our production costs, not including post-production, it came out to roughly $16,729.30. The main source of the funds for this project came in the source of a crowdsourced campaign from Seed and Spark. So we received $12K from the campaign, mostly from friends, family members, old work colleagues, etc. I did put in a little bit of my own money into this, and then we also ran a second crowdsourced campaign strictly for post-production costs. So from the post-production campaign, we raised an additional $1,880. I ultimately spent around $7,941.86 of my own money to make Cuddle Buddies happen. Number 2, a visual reflection of the times. So back in December of 2020, in the peak of COVID, when we had the lockdown and people really weren't going out anywhere, I still very much wanted to stay creative and wanted to put on a very small production that was very safe but very small of a crew, where we could fully do it with natural light. We could go out to a more remote area. So we spent a few months earlier that year planning out an idea that could be extremely producible for a very low budget with very little crew and probably just one actress. We decided we wanted to shoot in Malibu because the scenery out there is a lot more remote. So the budget is dated in December of 2020. That is right around the time of when we actually did the shoot. And originally, I will point out that the shoot was supposed to just be one day so that we could save costs on gear, on wardrobe, on rentals. However, I will point out that unfortunately, during our very first scene that we were shooting out in Malibu in the Leo Carrillo State Beach, we were probably an hour and a half into our first day of shooting, and unfortunately we didn't have a good camera protection cover, so the camera got wet and literally shut down in the middle of the shoot. So we had really shot only a handful of shots for the entire project, and unfortunately had to scrap most of our entire day after that. So what that meant is we did have to add a second day to be shot. So myself and JC did not take a fee for this, again, just to keep costs low and to put that budget into other things. For Riley's character, played by Bronte, we paid her $250 for both weekends, and this budget completely came out of mostly my pocket and a little bit of JC's. We didn't have to pay anything for locations or permits because we were small enough and it was the middle of 2020. Pretty much our main expense for this whole production really was just the camera and lens rental. So we shot this on a Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro. We used the Kowa Prominar anamorphic lens for the entire shoot, and we just used one focal length. It was a 40mm. It looked absolutely stunning on the camera. So in total, we spent $1,000.65 for camera and lens for 2 weekends. One of the added costs, unfortunately, is that since the camera got water damage, thankfully I did have my own production insurance, but we had to pay $500 for the deductible since the cost of repair was well over $500 from the insurance company. And then I purchased a wetsuit for $330 just so I could jump in the water and not freeze my butt off. So JC was willing to lend all of his lighting and grip gear in his van completely for free, just for DPing the project. So our total production budget was roughly $2,080.65. So all in all, the grand total for this project was $4,080.65. So in total, out of my own money, I spent around $3,780.65. So whenever I have a little extra spending money and can use it here and there when I need to for certain projects like this. Number 3. Takers. In April of 2021, we went into production on Takers, which is my horror short film about a young college student who faces an evil supernatural plague doctor. Takers really was my first major foray into the world of visual effects and stunts. And part of the reason I wrote this project was so that I could learn as a director how to work with those two different departments. So here's our final Takers budget, including production and post. So this budget was based off a 2-day shoot, and we were thankfully in the same location for both of those days. I had my friends Katie Ann and Willis both work as producers on this film. Here are all the different elements that we had for our crew. We had a PA, we had a site rep, DP, first and second AC, gaffer, key grip, best boy, and grip, and then our location fee, which was essentially this parking lot, but we ended up with $3,750. For transportation, we were able to take off all of those line items since we factored that into using our grip and electric company, who not only provided their own truck, but also their full set of lighting, grip, and electric gear. We used Shadowcast Pictures to do our camera rental, which again, we got a pretty good deal on for $1,700. For this one, because we were working with stunts, we hired a stunt coordinator, so including his rate and the rig that we used, so that came out to $1,305. Our sound mixer and boom op was able to do $700 for 2 days. And then again, we only had 2 characters for this. As far as food and crafty, which included lunch for both days, it came out to roughly $600. So when looking at just the production costs, it came out to roughly $20,142.61. When you look at our post-production costs, for the cost of the visual effects, which is actually an astoundingly good rate for over 35 visual effects shots, and with one artist working on them, it came out to $4,300 $100. The music was included with the sound design, so that was $0 on the line item. For post-production sound, again, my friend Sam Costello did the sound and the score for this, and we paid him $1,200 for sound and score. For the color grading, it was $1,000, so our total post-production cost came out to about $7,830. It takes the grand total, including post and production costs, to $30,072.61. So for takers, out of my own pocket, I spent $30,072.61. We did not do a crowdsource campaign. I did not receive any donations. We did not ask for any other money. And I would also take Christmas money, birthday money, etc. So by the time we were entering production, I pretty much had most of the stash of money pretty much ready to go. Number 4, Big Break. So my most recent short film, Big Break, which we've done a visual effects breakdown for on this channel. So Big Break was based off a 2-day shoot of back-to-back days over the course of a weekend. One thing that's funny to note if you look at this budget is the original project title was Anxiety. So I also worked on Big Break with JC Falcone, who is also the same person we collaborated with on visual reflection for the Times. So when we look at our crew costs, again, JC and myself waived our costs to keep budgets low. So for our assistant director, it was $400 for 2 days. Our camera assistant was $400 for 2 days. We had a Ronin operator who operated the Ronin 2 gimbal. Our gaffer and grip was $400. Our sound person was $650 for the weekend. Our special effects makeup came out to $1,347.10. This is definitely a much higher cost than a lot of the other line items, mainly because we had a very experienced makeup artist with a full prosthetic makeup application that took a considerable amount of time. So our subtotal just for crew costs came out to $8,372.10. Our production expenses included the location and all of the additional art department rentals, purchases, and wardrobe, cast and crew lunch, insurance, crafty, etc. So in total, our location costs came out to around $2,741.29. Because we did a full set build in the middle of the stage, we had to rent a lot of different flats and set pieces, which came out to $418.30. And then we had a 15-foot box truck rental for art, which came out to $552.38. For the cast and crew lunch for 2 days, we spent $710.91, including equipment, expendables, and media. We spent about $242.52. And then for the camera package, we used an Alexa Mini, which all came out to $1,147. So when we look at our total production budget number, it comes out to $24,512.08. When we factor in our post-production costs, we factored in $1,200 for post-sound design from Sam Costello. For an original score, my friend Andrew Mason did the original score for $975. And then for the total amount of VFX costs, including in total, it came out to $1,940. So for total post-production budget, we were looking at $4,115. When you look at our grand total budget, including production and post-production, it's $28,627.08. So at the beginning, JC was kind enough to donate $3,000 just for seed funding to get the project going without any additional crowdsource funding or contributions. I spent around $25,627.08 of my own money. Though in hindsight, I will say this is one I absolutely wish I had either pushed to do later or had done for more cheaply. So how much did it cost in total to produce all 4 of these projects? The grand total is $82,602.20. Don't tell my parents, but that includes donations and crowdsource campaigns. So of those 4 projects, how much did I actually spend of my own money producing all 4 of those? The grand total out of my own pocket comes out to $67,422.20. Which means that $15,180 in total came from external sources or crowdsource funds or donations and not from my own pocket. Was it all worth it? I have 4 extremely high quality projects that I am extremely proud of. They can go on my website, they are real material, and the amount of people I've met doing these projects, including crew, cast, has been absolutely irreplaceable. Doing these projects also genuinely improved improved my directing craft and my confidence to be able to go out and embark on a shoot and know that I know what I'm doing. I know how to handle visual effects and stunts and how to communicate with collaborators on all sides of the equation with confidence. And all of those things I definitely wouldn't trade for the world if I had to redo it. The cons: $68,000 is a ton of money to put into anything, let alone short films that really don't always have the best chance of making money, especially in the market the way it is. This is a lot of money that I have spent in a way that I'm still trying to reap the benefits of, in terms of getting a chance to direct larger scale features as a result of these shorts, which still hasn't happened to date. So just to be honest, it is something I still have yet to see the full investment of my funds go towards as of now, but I'm confident it will eventually. If I were to do it over again, I absolutely do think I would have explored a myriad of other ways to find the sources of those finances that went into these projects. I think I would have launched maybe at least one more crowdsource campaign than I did, and I think I would have tried harder to find independent donors or investors. All of this money didn't necessarily have to come from my pocket, but from other sources, or maybe even put more of that money back into the marketing budget so that any one of these films could have had an even higher chance of getting seen by more people more quickly. It's also very possible that I could have made an extremely low budget feature for the 80 or so K, but again, it would have been extremely tight, and I'm still not convinced that that's the caliber of budget that I would want to do a feature for in the first place. That concludes how much I've actually spent producing my own short films as a producer and director. I hope this was insightful and gave you a little insight as to how much production actually costs in the city of LA and how expensive making a film at a high caliber is. So hopefully this can help you take into account the costs as you budget and fundraise your own films. I want to hear from you. If you have financed or produced your own projects, I would love to hear how much you put into your projects and how it went, and if it was worth it. Or if you're currently in the budget and fundraising phase, let me know if this was helpful. If you haven't already, and as it relates to this current topic, check out my video on the top 5 ways to get your short film funded, which you can find right here. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will definitely catch you next week, where we continue to cover different techniques and tips to take your narrative film career to the next level. So I will definitely see you then.